Hi and welcome to another jam-packed car file. Now if you've been watching the programme since the beginning of the series, well then you've probably seen me drive some of the most desirable cars on the planet. And out of all the cars I've had the pleasure of driving, the three this week are the ones I've been looking forward to the most. Why, I hear you ask? Well, does this answer your question? I mean, just look at them. Three convertibles, and who cares about the British weather? These are not three ordinary convertibles. For this week's show, I'll be finding out just how much fun you can have in a TVR Tamora, a Porsche Boxster S and a Lotus Elise 111S. And of course, my old buddy Brendan Coogan will be here with his own alternative.
Cheers, John. Tonight I've got something a bit different. I'm going to try to prove to you that sometimes less can mean more. Intrigued? Join me later to find out why.
Sounds intriguing, Brendan, but it's going to have to wait because first up, it's my three babies. Oh yeah. First up is the Porsche Boxster S. A car with more pedigree than all the competitors at Krupp's, with not a dog in sight. The cheapest way to gain Porsche ownership, the Boxster S comes at just over £38,000. Its 3.2 flat-six engine brings the standstill to 60 dash up in just less than 6 seconds. And back home on the Autobahn, it'll get all the way up to 160 miles per hour. Next up is the Lotus Elise, taking a very different approach to open-top roadster design than Porsche. The Elise basically throws away everything you don't need, and I mean that. This 111S is their luxury model, which means you get an amazing and dazzling amount of mod cons, like a carpet and a stereo. Oh, how they spoil us. But if you thought that the Elise was a no-compromise driving machine, well, I can tell you, you ain't seen nothing yet. The TVR Tamora keeps the same back to basics. If you don't need, you ain't got it ethic. But adds a stonking 3.6 litre Speed 6 engine with enough torque to move county borders. It's the quickest to 60 of our three, taking less than 4.5 seconds. And if you're brave enough, it can go all the way up to 160 miles per hour. Now, there are two schools of thought when you talk about exterior design of a roadster. You have the gentle, sleek, girly route, or the mean, aggressive, bulging, if you've got it, flaunted route. Not difficult then to see which route the TVR took. It might look like a bath from the back and some sort of a bug from the front. But the TVR's intentions are very clear from the moment you see it. Like one of Kylie's outfits, it leaves absolutely nothing to the imagination, with its bulging arches and its gaping air vents. And with all due respect, I've seen roads in Ireland that are narrower than the two back wheels in this machine. It's not a handsome car, some of its dimensions are out of proportion, but what it does do is roars at you, absolutely screams at you to get in and give it your best shot. And it would probably laugh at your best effort. This is one machine that you will see in your rear view mirror. The Boxster is unmistakably a Porsche. From the front it looks virtually identical to a 911. It's very subtle, it doesn't scream aggression at you like the TVR, but its side vents, low skirts and retracting rear spoiler let you know it means business. The Elise is the prettiest of our trio. It's more aggressive than the previous model with a meaner stance and a more substantial look, but it's still no TVR. Funnily enough, its tiny dimensions are what lets you know the Elise ain't messing about. Let's face it, it looks fast, just standing still. Right, we've seen the different approaches that the manufacturers have taken, but which one of them is going to get the car file vote? The Tamora comes third because, although we like a bit of aggression in our car styling, the Tamora misses the mark somewhere. There are some nice individual touches, but it just doesn't seem to gel together. Second, we've got the Boxster. That might seem a controversial choice, but it's just a bit too, well, bland. It's handsome and subtle, but just a bit forgettable in the looks department. So the little Elise is our favourite for exterior styling. It manages to combine subtlety and purposefulness in a way that the others can't. It's unmistakably a fun little sports car. There's no extenuous spoilers or skirts. Everything is there for a reason. So you've got the scores for the exteriors, and now it's time for the interiors. And there's a few surprises here from the TVR. First of all, Where's the door handle? There doesn't seem to be one. This is where I have to work a bit of magic. Watch this. You've got to talk to it very calmly, stroke it, and then magic. Well, it's not really, actually. For some reason, they have put the door opener, it's a little button just under here. You press it and the door opens. Once inside the TVR, well, I can tell you, oh, you're in for a sensory treat. Now, I joked earlier on about the fact that the back looked like a bath. But when you get in here, it feels like you're after getting into one. You know that feeling you get when you slide into the bath and you get so relaxed you never want to move? Well, swap the bath for a TVR and you'll get the general idea. The big difference is, though, I can guarantee your bath won't have an engine that this baby has. In the middle here of the cockpit, you have this, which is the drive shaft, and it makes a lovely console, on top of which you'll find the gear stick, which is absolutely beautiful to use, and it's quite short, making it very, very sporty. As for the dash, well, I have to say it's one of the most creative and different dashes that I've ever seen in a car. Some of the little bits on it are fantastic. All the buttons and knobs are drilled aluminium and are beautiful to touch. And you've got these little two things behind the steering wheel. No, they're not gear changes like you find in Formula One. They actually change the settings on the computer, which appears up here on the dash. Seating position, I have to say it's very comfortable and very solid, something you'll need when you start throwing this around the place, but more about that later on. On the negative side, some of the materials and some of the finish aren't the best, but overall, ergonomically and aesthetically, this is a masterpiece. You can't quibble about the quality of finish in the Boxster. It feels totally solid, and again, everything is well laid out. Anyone who's familiar with the far more expensive 911 will feel right at home here. The layout and design are virtually identical. Step into the Lotus after the Porsche, and you're in for a culture shock. The door closes behind you with a rattle rather than a solid clunk, and there's none of the toys to play with. You might not want to spend hour after hour on the motorway in here, but for quick blasts around country lanes, there probably isn't a better place to be. I'm going to give top marks to the TVR for its interior. Now, yet again, this might be a little controversial, as I've already raised questions about the quality, but one look at it and you'll forgive it anything. It really is a visual treat. In second place, we've got the Porsche. No doubt it feels a lot better screwed together than the TVR, but it just doesn't have the flair of the Tamora, and is, frankly, a bit bland by comparison. Thirdly, we've got the Elise. The little Lotus was never going to win an interior test against competition like this. That's not what the Elise is about. And remember, it is significantly cheaper than the others. When you're buying a sports car, practicality probably won't be the top of your list, but you'll probably want enough room to be able to fit some sort of gear in for a long weekend away. So let's be cruel and start with the Elise. And the boot, well, it's around here somewhere. Aha, right here, just behind the engine. Definitely a place you don't want to put things that you want to keep cool. Now, I think you nearly have to break the handle off your toothbrush to get your gear in here, but we're going to try and get my bag in, like so. As you can see, it is a bit of a squeeze, but you can get it in. Now, room inside isn't much better. There are very few storage areas. And as for drinks holders, well, if you consider your passenger with 2 spare hands a drink holder, well, then you'll be laughing. The TVR doesn't fare much better. The boot is much deeper than the Lotus, but it's an awkward shape, and if you put the roof panel in there, you've lost half your room. Again, inside there's little in the way of cubby holes, although you do get a glove box at least. It's the Porsche, though, that really leads the way in terms of practicality. You get a decent sized boot at the rear, big enough for a couple of bags. No prizes for guessing who wins here then. The Porsche, it's really no contest. With 2 boots, both of which are bigger than the Elise's, storage space inside, and most importantly, with our changeable climate and electric roof, it simply trounces the TVR and the Lotus in this category. Second, we've got the TVR, a reasonable sized boot and at least some interior storage. It loses points for a manual and slightly awkward roof. And last, we've got the Elise. I know these cars aren't exactly designed with practicality as a foremost concern, but it would be nice to be able to get at least some luggage in. So far, so good, but it seems like the Elise is lagging behind ever so slightly. You know, I think I've looked at these cars for long enough. It's about time I got behind the wheel and drove one of them. But first, let's join Brendan Coogan for his alternative look.
In these days of shared parts bins and neutral handling, fun seems to be the last thing on the manufacturers' minds. Sure, there are cars that claim to offer a back-to-basics sports car experience, but then they go and miss the point by charging a premium for a prestige badge. Well, Smart, of all people, claim to have a remedy for this in the form of their new Roadster. Now sit down whilst I blow you away with some numbers. 80 horsepower, 800cc engine, 0 to 60 in just under 11 seconds. Doesn't sound exactly electrifying, does it? But the Roadster isn't about brute force and acceleration to embarrass a jet fighter, it's about the actual driving feel. And now, don't laugh, it's fantastic. With a low centre of gravity and near perfect weight distribution, the Smart really does offer a thrilling drive. It's not thrilling in a, oh my god, hold on kind of way, but in a pure, back to basics way. Take the roof down and find a tight, twisting stretch of road and marvel at the way in which you pour the Smart into corners and it laps them up and comes begging for more. It's not got the power for full sideways power slides, and better for it. It means you can just get on with enjoying the wind in the hair experience without worrying that you'll end up wrapped round a tree. I'd just take the standard car and enjoy it in the manner in which it was intended. As for the price, the Roadster we have here starts at £13,500, whilst the coupe version is £1,000 more. Standard equipment includes wheels, some windows and a handbrake. It really is that basic, but functional and well designed. Well, I think we've given a convincing case there for going against the perceived wisdom and going for a simpler driving experience. The Smart Roadster really does hark back to cars like the Austin Healey Sprite and the MG Midget, and they're still classics today. Who needs hundreds of horsepower and enough torque to move houses? Not me. Back to you, John.
So it's true what they say, good things do come in small parcels. But you know, Brendan, I still think I prefer my three beauties. Well, that's nearly it for part one of Car File, but make sure you join me after the break when I stop looking and start driving these three machines. See you in a minute. Hi and welcome back to Car File. Now, to say that I have a great job is a bit of an understatement. After all, look at what I do. But just when I thought things couldn't get any better, didn't some crazed producer come along and pick these three cars? The Porsche Boxster S, the Lotus Elise 111S and the TVR Tamora. And seeing as this crazed producer picked these three cars, I'm going to let him choose which one I'm going to drive first. Ben? Ooh, the TVR. Oh, it's a hard life. The TVR Tamora, but it puts more than a smile on your face. It is awesome. I was trying to explain it to someone earlier on what it's like to drive this, and all I can say is savage. Good Irish way of saying things. This is a savage machine. The power is ridiculous to the degree where you'll just absolutely adore it. When I put my foot down, just listen to that engine. It is incredible. I genuinely think that this is more of a racing car than it is a normal car. It is superb. So what creates this awesome power that this TVR Tamora has under its bonnet? Well, it's a 3.6 straight six, which throws out in or around 350 brake horsepower. When you do start throwing this around the place, when you find that the clutch is a bit sharp, the steering is very heavy, as well as the gearbox being very heavy. And on a day like today, with typical English weather, where it's raining 1 minute, sun shining the next minute, meaning the roads are dry and wet, it can be quite difficult to keep this particular machine under control. There is no ABS, there is no traction control, there is absolutely nothing in this car, apart from pure power. Did I mention that earlier? Pure power. This car has power. Power, 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 power. And it's wonderful. There is one thing about this machine that you would consider to be bad in others, and that's noise. It's very noisy in here. Someone explained earlier to me that it sounded more like a tractor inside. It doesn't. But the noise, to me, is like music. How can you not like that? The Elise is a totally different beast to the TVR. you get a fairly standard 1.8 Rover VVC engine with tweaks to the engine management so that you get just short of 160 brake horsepower. The really impressive thing is that the Elise weighs just 795 kgs, which is about the same as one of the Tamora's wheels, meaning you get a power to weight ratio of 199 brake horsepower per tonne. That means you get 0 to 60 in 5.1 seconds and a top speed in excess of 130 miles per hour. This car is not going to be shown up on the road. What's even better though is the way this car handles. Every bump a road has to throw at you is transmitted through the steering and the chassis, and whilst this means it's not exactly relaxed, at least you know what's happening beneath you. There's no electronics trying to spoil your fun. What you feel is what's happening, good or bad. It really is a purist sports car using low weight and clever engineering to achieve truly breathtaking performance. This is the Boxster S model. It comes with a 3.2 flat 6 compared to the standard 2.7 252 brake horsepower. It is a superb car to drive. It tops out at 160 miles an hour, definitely a case of going over to Germany and hitting the autobahns. And it'll get you to 60 in a whopping 5.9 seconds, which I have to say is quite impressive compared to some of the other cars that I've been driving. Now, although this Porsche isn't as wild to drive as the other two cars, it does feel solid, and you know, it feels like it's just well put together. Inside, the dash is nicely laid out, the dials are directly in front of you, everything is close to hand, the stereo is just there, even though it could be a bit more angled towards you. Now, the fact that this is a convertible means that, well, you're going to have a bit of noise. And that noise comes pretty much from just above the windows on both the passenger and the driver's side. It's not that bad, but I just thought I'd mention it. The other great thing about a car like this, as I said earlier, it's got a 3.2 flat 6, which means it does things like this. Oh! You know, oh, you can't beat that sort of thing, can you? Oh, choosing a loser from these three on the road is like choosing the ugly one from a lineup of supermodels. Yes, I know, I choose them all as well, but this is the real world and we have to pick one. This decision really does depend on personal preference and your driving style. For me though, I'm going to put the TVR third. Oh, that hurt. It's a real shame, and I know some of you will be throwing things at the telly, but I've kind of gotten used to that at this stage. Having one for a day is mega, but owning one would be just too much like hard work. Second, and this is really tough, it's the Porsche. I'm going to totally contradict myself now by saying that this is too easy to drive. It is an astonishingly quick car, but you feel disconnected from the fun. Sure, you can turn the traction control off, and that definitely helps, but it's still a little over-engineered. Which means the little Lotus wins this week's drivability contest. It's simply superb, and a 111S Guise is just as quick off the mark and even quicker cornering than the other two. Well, unfortunately, that's the end of the fun and games. It's time to get all serious now and figure out which one of our cars offers the best value for money. Now, if it was bang for your buck, the TVR would win hands down. Let's face it, you'd have to borrow some equipment from the RAF to get performance like this car offers. And at £36,000, it's quite a good deal. But this car comes with very limited equipment. You get a handbrake and a set of wheels, which come in quite handy, but that's pretty much it. But let's face it, to talk about the TVR and value for money in the same sentence is completely missing the point. Time to take the hanky out because I get a bit soppy here. If ever there was a car you bought with your heart and not your head, it's this, the TVR. Again, the Lotus Elise is another car where value for money doesn't apply. It's very basic and it's no luxury machine. But that doesn't matter. Think of this, a summer's evening. You take the roof off and take it through all the back roads that you can find. You will forgive this car for anything. At £27,995, £30,000 to round it off, it is quite expensive, especially when you consider you're probably going to have a second car. Now these Series 2 do hold on to their value quite well, but what I do suggest is you buy the bog standard Elise, save yourself £5,000 because you won't miss the extra 40 brake horsepower and you certainly won't miss the extra bit of kit. Go on, off you go. Now, last up, it's the Porsche. Now, £38,000 is a lot of money to pay for a car, but everything is relative, and £38,000 for a Porsche is quite the bargain. It's more practical than the other two cars. It's actually got more equipment, and not alone that, the performance from this machine is absolutely astounding. So overall, I would have to say, it is quite the bargain. Relatively speaking, of course. In third place, we've put the TVR. It's a fantastically good car. Nothing else on the road looks or sounds anything like a TVR. And its performance, well, it will literally take your breath away. It loses points though for a lack of equipment and for a lack of practicality, but that will mean absolutely nothing to potential TVR owners. You buy a TVR for the way it looks and the way it goes, and judged solely on these terms, nothing else comes close. Second, we've got the Elise. Again, a magnificent car, and in the right situation there are very few cars that offer a more rewarding drive. Fast, sure-footed and nimble. It is an absolute blast. But you'd have to ask yourself, could you really live with this every day? And if not, it's an expensive weekend toy. So, this week's winner is the Porsche, a brilliantly accomplished car in all aspects. It perhaps felt slightly too accomplished next to this week's very raw competition. But if you want an effortlessly fast, safe, well-made and well-equipped sports car, you really should look no further than the Boxster S. Well, that's it from another action-packed car file. You know, I have had so much fun. It's the first time I felt like a little kid in a long time with these three machines. But make sure you join me next week when I'll be going undercover to see which is going to be the stealthiest executive car on the market. But that's really it. We shall see you then. All I have to do now is choose which car I'm going to take home with me. The crew car? I'm not taking the crew car. I want the Porsche or the TVR. No, I want the